Hey, it's Webs here with more cards from the Sunken City revealed today. This one is going to be a little bit shorter because there haven't actually been that many cards revealed since the last video. So let's get on to it. The first card revealed today is a retrain of Sir Finley. This time he is a neutral minion again. This version of Sir Finley is a 1-cost minion with 1 attack, 3 HP, and is of course a murLoc, and with the battle cry, swap your hand with the bottom of your deck. So with all the dredge cards and cards that put cards at the bottom of the deck in this set, I can't see a world where this doesn't actually see some play, especially because this always makes Ambassador Phelan actually draw into all 3 of the Colossal Minions as a big payoff for that card, which is something that card needed to actually be consistent enough to actually see some play. Though if we are going to continue to see support for cards that actually draw from the bottom of the deck, or add cards to the bottom of the deck, cards like this will see a lot of play. And even if you aren't using a bunch of dredge cards, this could probably see some play in other decks just because of the fact that if you do brick, this is a way to unbrick your hand in some less consistent decks. Though I don't know if those decks would want to run this as a one of to actually try to unbrick your hand, but it is always a good possibility. It's similar to the 1 cost that shuffles the lowest cost card in your hand back into your deck, but on a legendary scale. The second card that got revealed is Kotori Lightblade, which is a 2-cost legendary minion for Paladin with 2 attack, 3 HP, and after you cast a holy spell on this, cast it again on another friendly minion. So this is one of those cards that looks relatively decent on paper, but it does require you to have 2 other cards to actually make full use of its ability. It's very similar to Guff, I would say, or the original Guff, I mean, where if you cast a nature spell on a minion, you would give +2/+2 to another minion. So that didn't really see any play, and I don't really think this one will probably see that much play, but I am sure glad that Libram Paladin is rotating out, because can you imagine the nightmare of having this card in rotation with Libram Paladin? The next card revealed, Hedera the Heretic, which is a 7-cost Druid legendary minion with 4 attack, 5 HP. She is a Naga with the battle cry. For each spell you've cast while holding this minion, summon a minion that costs the same. So right now, Druid has a lot of decks that use a bunch of spells and very little minions. So this is definitely a card that could see a lot of play, especially if we see even more big spell Druid pushed forward, depending on what the other cards in the set are actually going to be. And in theory, I'm assuming that's probably going to be the overarching theme for Druid for the set, if this is the first Druid card we're actually seeing. And I think this has a lot of potential, though it does go against what they said was their current design philosophy a little bit, just because this does have a big potential to summon out a bunch of minions on 1 turn just by using 1 card, and this isn't going to be that hard of a card to actually get out on the board, especially given the fact that the hero card Guff exists, so you could even combo it out on the same turn as playing a bunch of minions. Though it should be really cool to try to see if there's any decks that will actually make this try to work. It really reminds me of Spiteful Druid from back in the day. It seems like we're revisiting a lot of old decks that haven't actually seen any support for quite a while in new forms of fashion. And speaking of new versions of old decks, the next card revealed was Gaia the Techtonic, which is Mage's Colossus Minion, which is an 8-cost mech with 5 attack and 7 HP with the Colossus of 2. After a friendly mech attacks, deal 1 damage to all enemies, and the 2 appendages of Gaia are their 2 drills, which both have rush, which makes it where you can actually do at least 2 damage to all enemy minions and your opponent's face whenever you play it if they have some minions out on the board. And since we are supposedly moving towards more of a minion based meta, then this card will probably see some play in some type of mech mage, and is a deck that I haven't seen in quite a while, and I'm actually kind of happy to see. It does make the other mage card from yesterday that was revealed that adds 3 mechs into your hand a lot better, because in theory you could get a lot of extra copies of this, thus allowing you to do even more damage. So it should be an overall really good card if games actually last till turn 8. If they don't, this will probably see no play, But Colossus is this mechanic that I'm really looking forward to. It's probably the mechanic I'm looking forward to the most out of anything in any recent sets for quite a long time. So I'm going to probably try to find a way to make every Colossus minion work in some type of deck, even if they're not the best in the world. And speaking of more Colossus minions that might not be the best in the world, the next one is Gigafin, which is exactly what I predicted for the Warlock Colossus minion, which is a giant murLoc, who is a 8-cost murLoc with 7 attack, 4 HP, with the Colossus of 1, and the battle cry, devour all enemy minions, and the death rattle, spit them all out. And his appendage is his maw, which has taunt and death rattle. It permanently destroys all minions inside of Gigafin. So the stat lines on this is really interesting just because they're reflections of each other, though in its given class, Gigafin is probably not the best card in the world to actually try to make use of, which is kind of sad to actually say, but it is the sad truth about a card like this. 4 HP is probably pretty easy to actually deal with, especially with a bunch of removal spells by turn 8. Though, if you are playing rogue deck and you generate this off of reconnaissance, you have ways to bounce it back to your hand. That's just eating up all your opponent's minions, and it is a really good target for rogue, as it does give you some type of AoE board clear late in the game that you might actually need for that class. Though I have made a list of cards that you could possibly abuse with Gigafin that are currently in rotation. Ritual of Doom is the first one in question. This card could easily be a pseudo Twisting Nether for a murLoc deck that might not normally run it, and because murLoc decks usually summon a bunch of murLocs back to back to back, its condition to actually summon a 5/5 demon shouldn't be that hard, though this is in the core set, so we don't know if this one will stick around. Grimoire of Sacrifice is a decent card to use in combination, but at the same time, you're not going to hit probably any minions unless you're playing a death rattle deck with its secondary effect, and you would only be using it to try to make sure your opponent doesn't actually get all their minions back. Desecrated Graveyard is probably the worst option out of all of these to actually try to make use of this, but it is worth mentioning, I guess. Sacrificial Summoner is actually pretty good and actually gives some type of play for a card like this. Void Terror is another core card that might be rotating out soon, which you could in theory eat both versions of Gigafin, but again, not probably the best option. And finally, you have Siphon Soul. There's probably some other ones that you could possibly use, but I would say Ritual of Doom is probably the best for Warlock deck, as this is the card that probably can be abused the most, though it just really depends if they keep it into rotation after the new core set gets revealed. Really just depends on how Blizzard is feeling overall. Alright, I know this video is a little bit shorter than most card reveal videos, and I do want to try to make at least one of these each day. It really just depends on how many cards actually get revealed, but the weekends are always a little bit slower, so I wanted to go over some of the other images that we have, little tidbits of each card that will be revealed in the near future. The first one I think that's kind of obvious is probably the Hooktusk pirate ship. This might be Rogue's Colossus minion, it really depends, or it could be this giant shark mouth, depending on if they want to go with the reoccurring theme of sharks or pirates for Rogue. It really just depends in the long run. The other card that is probably very easy to tell what it's going to be is Queen Ajara, which will probably be either a neutral minion or a secondary legendary minion for Mage. It really depends if they want to make the iconic villain of this set a neutral minion or a class only minion, but most of the time they make them a neutral minion, so I would almost want to bet she is going to be neutral. And finally, the last one that I almost would want to bet this guess is going to be correct is Zykool. That was the second to last boss in Eternal Palace in the same raid as Ajara, and this definitely looks like his shoulder pad, so I could easily see this being a card for maybe Warlock. I don't know, it really depends. Again, he is a darker character, so it might even be for Priest, since it would go with the Shadow theme. There's two things I would love to know down below. What do you think are some characters that are actually going to appear in this set? And what cards are you looking most forward to? Because right now, Colossus minions, even if they're not the best minions in the world, are definitely the mechanic that I'm looking most forward to abusing in this set. And like always, if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe. And until next time, bye bye.